New York City skyline glittered through the floor-to-ceiling windows of the luxurious Manhattan penthouse. The air buzzed with excitement as the city's elite mingled, their laughter and chatter mixing with the soft jazz playing in the background. Samantha stood near the bar, her emerald green gown hugging her curves. She sipped champagne, her eyes scanning the room until they landed on David. David commanded attention without effort. His tailored suit accentuated his athletic build, and his easy smile drew people to him like moths to a flame. A small crowd had gathered around him, hanging on his every word. Samantha watched as he gestured animatedly, no doubt regaling his admirers with tales of his latest business triumph. Their eyes met across the room. David's gaze lingered on Samantha, his smile widening slightly. She felt a flutter in her stomach, but maintained her composure, offering a small nod in return. As if on cue, David excused himself from his group and made his way towards her. "I don't believe we've met," David said, his voice deep and smooth. "I'm David Reeves." "Samantha Carter," she replied, extending her hand. Instead of shaking it, David brought it to his lips, placing a soft kiss on her knuckles. "A pleasure, Samantha. What brings you to this little soiree?" They fell into easy conversation, discussing their careers and aspirations. David spoke of his latest venture, a tech startup poised to revolutionize the industry. Samantha shared her dreams of climbing the corporate ladder, her ambition evident in every word. As they talked, the rest of the party seemed to fade away. They found themselves drawn closer, their bodies angled towards each other. David's hand occasionally brushed against Samantha's arm, sending shivers down her spine. The music changed to a slow, sultry number. David extended his hand. "Care to dance?" On the dance floor, their bodies moved in perfect sync. David's hand rested on the small of Samantha's back, guiding her expertly through the steps. The heat between them was palpable, their faces inches apart. "Let's get some air," David suggested, his breath warm against Samantha's ear. They slipped away from the crowd, finding a secluded spot on the terrace. The cool night air was a welcome respite from the warmth of the party. New York City sprawled out before them, a sea of twinkling lights. David turned to Samantha, his eyes intense. "I have to admit, I've been watching you all night." "Is that so?" Samantha replied, her heart racing. "There's something about you, Samantha. Something captivating." He leaned in, and Samantha met him halfway. Their lips met in a passionate kiss. Months of pent-up desire released in an instant. David's hands cupped Samantha's face, while hers gripped his lapels, pulling him closer. When they finally broke apart, both were breathless. David rested his forehead against Samantha's, a smile playing on his lips. "I have a feeling this is just the beginning," he murmured. Samantha nodded, unable to find her voice. As they stood there, wrapped in each other's arms with the city as their backdrop, she knew her life was about to change forever. The following morning, Samantha awoke to the soft ping of her phone. Her heart raced as she saw David's name on the screen. The message was brief, but intriguing. "Coffee at 2. I have a proposition for you." Samantha spent the next few hours in a state of nervous anticipation. She arrived at the upscale cafe 10 minutes early, smoothing her skirt as she waited. David walked in precisely at 2, his presence commanding attention even in this casual setting. "Samantha," he greeted her warmly, leaning in to kiss her cheek. "I'm glad you could make it." After ordering their drinks, David got straight to the point. "I'll be frank. I was impressed by our conversation last night. Your ambition, your intelligence. I think you'd be an asset to my team. I'd like to offer you a position as my personal assistant." Samantha's eyes widened. "That's quite an offer. But why me? Surely you have more qualified candidates." David leaned back, his expression turning serious. I do, but I also need someone I can trust, someone who sees beyond the facade. He paused, seeming to weigh his next words carefully. Samantha, my life isn't as perfect as it appears. He lowered his voice, glancing around to ensure their privacy. A few years ago, I was involved in a business deal that, well, let's just say it wasn't entirely above board. It's been covered up, but the threat of exposure is always there. I need someone who can help me navigate these choppy waters. Samantha listened, her mind racing. This was more than she'd bargained for. Why are you telling me this? Because I believe in transparency, and because I think you're smart enough to handle it. David reached across the table, taking her hand. What do you say? Are you up for the challenge? Before Samantha could respond, her phone buzzed. It was a text from her friend Lisa. Be careful with David. Men like him are dangerous. Don't get in over your head. Samantha stared at the message, conflicting emotions warring within her. On one hand, Lisa's warning rang true. Getting involved with David, both personally and professionally, could be risky. On the other hand, the opportunity was too good to pass up. This could be her chance to break into the upper echelons of New York's business world. She looked up at David, who was watching her expectantly. His eyes held a mixture of hope and vulnerability that tugged at her heart. I have to ask, Samantha said slowly, what exactly would this job entail? David's face lit up, sensing her interest. You'd be my right hand, managing my schedule, attending meetings with me, helping to strategize. It's demanding work, but I think you're more than capable. Samantha took a deep breath. She thought of Lisa's warning, of the risks involved. But she also thought of the potential rewards, not just professionally, but personally as well. The connection she felt with David was undeniable. All right, she said finally. I'm in. David's smile was dazzling. Excellent. We'll start Monday. I promise you won't regret this, Samantha. As they left the cafe, Samantha felt a mix of excitement and apprehension. She was stepping into a new world, one of power, luxury, and intrigue. It was everything she'd ever wanted, but she couldn't shake the feeling that she was also stepping into something far more complex than she realized. David's revelation about his past hung in the air between them, a reminder that beneath the glittering surface of his world lay hidden dangers. Samantha knew she was taking a risk, but as she watched David hail a taxi for her, she decided it was a risk worth taking. See you Monday, David said, his hand lingering on hers as he helped her into the car. As the taxi pulled away, Samantha's mind raced with possibilities. Her life was about to change dramatically, and she was both thrilled and terrified to see where this new path would lead. Monday morning arrived with a mix of anticipation and nerves for Samantha. She stood in front of David's office building, a gleaming skyscraper that seemed to touch the clouds. Taking a deep breath, she stepped inside. The lobby was a testament to luxury, all marble and polished brass. A security guard directed her to the executive elevator, which whisked her to the top floor. As the doors opened, Samantha was greeted by a bustling open-plan office, filled with well-dressed professionals moving with purpose. Samantha, David's voice called out. He appeared from around a corner, looking impeccable in a tailored suit. Welcome to your new workplace. He gave her a tour of the office, introducing her to key team members. Samantha noticed the mix of curiosity and wariness in their eyes as David presented her as his new personal assistant. She held her head high, determined to prove herself. David's office was impressive, a corner space with floor-to-ceiling windows offering a panoramic view of the city. This is where you'll be spending most of your time, he said, gesturing to a desk just outside his office door. As Samantha settled in, she began to grasp the enormity of David's role. His phone rang constantly, and a steady stream of people came seeking his attention. She watched him navigate it all with ease, his charisma and sharp mind on full display. During a rare quiet moment, David called Samantha into his office. "How are you finding everything?" he asked, his tone softer than it had been all day. "It's intense," Samantha admitted, "but exciting." David nodded, a hint of vulnerability showing through his confident facade. "It can be overwhelming. The pressure never really lets up." He paused, seeming to debate whether to continue. "Sometimes I wonder if it's all worth it." Samantha was taken aback by his candor. She reached out, briefly touching his hand. "You've built something incredible here, David. That's worth a lot." He smiled, the tension in his shoulders easing slightly. "Thank you, Samantha. I have a feeling you're going to be invaluable here." Their moment was interrupted by a knock at the door. A striking woman with perfectly coiffed blonde hair entered without waiting for a response. "David, darling, I hope I'm not interrupting." David's demeanor changed instantly, his professional mask slipping back into place. "Claire," he said, his tone cool. "What can I do for you?" Claire's eyes landed on Samantha, narrowing slightly. "I don't believe we've met. I'm Claire Hardwick, head of marketing." "Samantha Carter," she replied, extending her hand. Claire's handshake was firm, almost aggressive. "Samantha is my new personal assistant," David explained. Claire's smile didn't reach her eyes. "How interesting. I wasn't aware you were hiring for that position." The tension in the room was palpable. Samantha could sense a history between David and Claire, one that clearly hadn't ended well. "If you'll excuse us," David said firmly, "Samantha and I have work to do." Claire left, but not before giving Samantha a look that could freeze water. As the door closed behind her, Samantha turned to David. "Ex-girlfriend?" she guessed. David sighed. "Is it that obvious?" "Yes, Claire and I dated briefly. It didn't end well. She's brilliant at her job, but she can be ruthless." "I'll keep that in mind," Samantha said, feeling a mix of sympathy for David and wariness about Claire. Over the next few days, Samantha threw herself into her new role. She quickly became David's right hand, anticipating his needs and streamlining his workload. However, she couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. More than once, she caught Claire observing her with a calculating gaze. The whispers started soon after. Samantha overheard snippets of conversation in the break room, comments about her lack of experience and speculation about her relationship with David. She tried to ignore them, focusing on her work, but the constant scrutiny was wearing. One afternoon, as Samantha was preparing for an important client meeting, Claire approached her desk. "I hope you're up for this," she said, her tone sickly sweet. "These clients are particular. It would be such a shame if David's new assistant couldn't handle the pressure." As Claire walked away, Samantha felt a flicker of doubt. Was she really qualified for this job? Or was she in over her head, just as Lisa had warned? Pushing aside her insecurities, Samantha straightened her shoulders. She had earned this position, and she was determined to prove it. To Claire, to the office gossips, and most importantly, to herself. Determined to navigate the complex social dynamics of her new workplace, Samantha sought out connections beyond David's immediate circle. She noticed a group of women from various departments often gathering for lunch in the office kitchen. One day, she gathered her courage and approached them. "Mind if I join you?" Samantha asked, trying to keep her voice steady. The women exchanged glances before one of them, a sharp-eyed woman in her 40s, nodded. "Pull up a chair. I'm Margaret from legal." As introductions were made, Samantha felt herself relaxing. These women came from different departments, HR, finance, IT, but they shared a common bond of experience in the cutthroat world of New York business. Over the next few weeks, these lunches became a lifeline for Samantha. The women shared war stories, offering advice on everything from office politics to dealing with difficult clients. "Don't let Claire get to you," Margaret advised one day after Samantha confided her struggles. "She does this to every woman she sees as a threat. Stand your ground." Armed with this support network, Samantha's confidence grew. She tackled her tasks with renewed vigor, impressing David with her efficiency and insight. Her role expanded beyond simple administrative tasks as David began to rely on her judgment in business matters. The true test came at the annual charity gala, a glittering affair attended by New York's business elite. Samantha spent weeks helping David prepare, coordinating details, and briefing him on key attendees. On the night of the event, Samantha arrived in a sleek black gown, her hair swept up elegantly. As she entered the ballroom, she felt eyes turn towards her. This time, instead of shrinking under the attention, she held her head high. David appeared at her side, looking dashing in a tuxedo. "You look stunning," he murmured, his hand brushing the small of her back. Throughout the evening, Samantha found herself engaged in conversations with influential figures from various industries. She spoke confidently about David's latest projects, impressing several potential investors. "Your new assistant is quite the find," an older gentleman remarked to David. Sharp as a tack, David beamed with pride. "Samantha has been an invaluable addition to our team." As the night wore on, Samantha noticed David keeping a close eye on her. When she excused herself from a group to get a drink, he followed. "You're a natural at this," David said, his voice low. "I knew you had potential, but you've exceeded all my expectations." Samantha felt a flush of pleasure at his praise. "I'm just doing my job," she replied modestly. David's hand found hers, squeezing gently. "It's more than that. You belong here, Samantha, in this world." The moment was interrupted by Claire, who appeared suddenly at David's elbow. "David, darling, the Johnsons are asking for you. Something about that merger we discussed?" David's demeanor changed instantly, becoming all business. "Of course. Samantha, would you mind joining us? Your input could be valuable." As they moved through the crowd, Samantha felt a mix of emotions. Pride at David's trust in her abilities, excitement at being included in high-level discussions, but also a nagging worry. David's swift change from intimate to professional reminded her of the complexities of their relationship. The rest of the evening passed in a whirlwind of introductions and discussions. By the time the last guests were leaving, Samantha was exhausted but exhilarated. She had held her own in a room full of power players, and the sense of accomplishment was intoxicating. As they waited for their cars, David turned to Samantha. "I need you to clear my schedule for tomorrow morning. There's an important meeting I need you to sit in on." Samantha nodded, already mentally rearranging his appointments. "Of course. Anything specific I should prepare?" David's expression was unreadable. "Just be ready for anything. This could be a game changer for us." As Samantha climbed into her taxi, she felt a mix of anticipation and trepidation. She had proven herself tonight, but tomorrow would bring new challenges. The world she had entered was full of opportunities, but also fraught with hidden dangers. As the city lights blurred past her window, Samantha wondered just how deep she was willing to go to secure her place in this glittering, treacherous world. The next morning, Samantha arrived at the office early, her mind racing with possibilities about the mysterious meeting. She found David already in his office, poring over documents spread across his desk. "Samantha, good. Come in and close the door," David said, his tone serious. He briefed her on the meeting, a potential merger with a rival tech company that could dramatically expand their market share. The catch? The other company's CEO was notoriously difficult to work with. "I need you in there," David explained. "Your fresh perspective could be invaluable." As they entered the conference room, Samantha felt the weight of responsibility on her shoulders. The meeting was tense from the start, with egos clashing and tempers flaring. She observed silently, taking mental notes. During a particularly heated exchange, Samantha saw an opening. "If I may," she interjected, her voice steady despite her racing heart. She proposed a compromise that addressed both companies' main concerns. The room fell silent. David looked at her with a mixture of surprise and approval. The rival CEO, after a moment's consideration, nodded slowly. "That could work," he admitted grudgingly. As the meeting wrapped up on a positive note, Samantha felt a surge of pride. She had made a real difference. However, her elation was short-lived. "What the hell was that?" Claire's voice cut through the air as they exited the conference room. "Who do you think you are, little Miss Nobody, speaking up like that?" David stepped in. "Claire, that's enough." Samantha's input was exactly what we needed. Claire's eyes narrowed. "Oh, I'm sure you think so, David. We all know why she's really here." The implication hung in the air, poisonous and unspoken. Samantha felt her cheeks burn with a mixture of anger and humiliation. "That's completely out of line," David snapped. "Samantha, would you give us a moment?" As Samantha walked away, she could hear the heated argument behind her. She retreated to her desk, hands shaking slightly as she tried to focus on her work. Later that afternoon, David called her into his office. "I want to apologize for Claire's behavior," he said, running a hand through his hair. "It was unprofessional and uncalled for." Samantha nodded, still feeling unsettled. "David, I appreciate that. But is this going to be a recurring issue? I can handle office politics, but if my presence is causing this much disruption..." "No," David cut her off firmly. "You've more than proven your worth here. Don't let Claire or anyone else make you doubt that." He paused, seeming to choose his next words carefully. "Samantha, I value your work immensely, but I also value our connection. I hope you know that." The air between them felt charged. Samantha was acutely aware of how close they were standing, of the intensity in David's eyes. Part of her wanted to lean in, to let the tension break. But another part held back, wary of complicating things further. "I should get back to work," she said softly, taking a step back. "There's a lot to do after this morning's meeting." David nodded, a flicker of disappointment crossing his face. "Of course. We'll talk more later." As Samantha returned to her desk, her mind was in turmoil. She was proud of her professional achievement, but Claire's words had shaken her. Was that how everyone saw her? Just David's latest conquest? She opened her laptop, determined to focus on work. But as she scrolled through her emails, she couldn't shake the feeling that she was at a crossroads. She had fought hard to prove herself in this world, but at what cost? And how much further was she willing to go? The rest of the day passed in a blur of meetings and phone calls. As the office emptied out for the evening, Samantha found herself alone at her desk, staring out at the New York skyline. The city lights twinkled, beautiful but distant, much like the world she had entered, she realized. Glittering, alluring, but ultimately cold and unforgiving. She pulled up a job search website, almost on autopilot. As she scrolled through listings, she wondered if it was time to consider other options, to find a path that didn't require her to constantly justify her presence, to fight against whispers and sidelong glances. But as her finger hovered over the apply button for a promising listing, she hesitated. Was she really ready to walk away from everything she had worked for? From the opportunities this job offered? From David? Closing the browser window with a sigh, Samantha gathered her things to leave. She didn't have the answers yet, but she knew one thing for certain. Something had to change. The question was, what? And more importantly, was she prepared for the consequences of that change? Weeks passed, and the office settled into an uneasy rhythm. Samantha continued to excel in her role, but the undercurrent of tension remained. She threw herself into her work, often staying late into the night. One evening, as the office had long since emptied, David emerged from his office, looking weary but excited. "Samantha, you're still here. Good. I need to talk to you about something important." He revealed that he was on the verge of signing a massive contract, one that could propel the company to new heights. "This deal could change everything," he explained, his eyes gleaming with ambition. "But the preparations will be intense. I'll need you more than ever." Samantha nodded, pushing aside her fatigue. "Of course, David. Whatever you need." The next few weeks were a whirlwind of activity. Samantha's life became a blur of meetings, late-night strategy sessions, and endless cups of coffee. She coordinated with legal teams, prepared presentations, and acted as David's second shadow. As the pressure mounted, Samantha found herself losing touch with the outside world. Her friends' calls went unanswered. Her apartment became little more than a place to crash for a few hours between workdays. One night, as she pored over contract details, Samantha caught her reflection in the darkened office window. She barely recognized the woman staring back at her. Dark circles under her eyes, hair hastily pulled back, designer clothes wrinkled from long hours at her desk. "Is everything all right?" David's voice startled her. He stood in the doorway of his office, his tie loosened, looking as tired as she felt. "I'm fine," Samantha said automatically, "just reviewing the Johnson clause again." David approached, placing a hand on her shoulder. "You've been working incredibly hard. I don't know what I'd do without you." The warmth of his touch, the sincerity in his voice, it was everything Samantha had wanted. Yet she felt a strange emptiness. "I'm glad I can help," she said, mustering a smile. As David returned to his office, Samantha's phone buzzed. It was a message from Lisa, her old friend. "Hey stranger, remember us? Girls' night this weekend. No excuses this time." Samantha stared at the message, a wave of longing washing over her. When was the last time she'd done anything just for herself? She typed out a quick, "I'll try," knowing even as she sent it that work would likely intervene. The next day, during a rare lunch break, Samantha found herself in the company of her office allies. As they chatted, she realized how long it had been since she'd joined them. "You've been scarce lately," Margaret observed. "This big deal of David's keeping you busy?" Samantha nodded, picking at her salad. "It's been intense, but it's exciting to be part of something so important." The women exchanged glances. "Just remember," Margaret said gently, "there's more to life than work. Don't lose yourself in all this." The words hit Samantha harder than she expected. Had she been losing herself? She thought of her neglected apartment, her unanswered messages, the hobbies and interests she'd let fall by the wayside. As she returned to her desk, Samantha felt a growing unease. She was proud of her work, of how far she'd come, but at what cost? She'd entered this world seeking power and success, but now she felt more like a shadow, David's shadow. That evening, as she prepared for yet another late night, Samantha made a decision. She needed perspective, needed to remember who she was outside of this office. "David," she called, stepping into his office. "I need to take tomorrow off, personal reasons." David looked up, surprised. "Tomorrow? Samantha, you know how crucial this time is." "I know," she interrupted, surprising herself with her firmness. "But I need this. Just one day." After a moment's hesitation, David nodded. "Of course, you've more than earned it." As Samantha left the office that night, she felt a mix of anxiety and relief. One day to herself. One day to remember who Samantha Carter was, beyond being David's assistant. She had no idea that this small act of self-assertion would set in motion events that would change everything. As she stepped into the cool night air, Samantha took a deep breath, feeling, for the first time in weeks, like herself again. Tomorrow was a new day, and with it, perhaps, a chance to recalibrate her course in this glittering, demanding world she'd chosen to enter. Samantha's day off was a whirlwind of self-discovery. She reconnected with old friends, indulged in a long-neglected hobby, and spent time reflecting on her journey. By the time she returned to the office the next day, she felt refreshed and more centered. As she settled into her desk, David appeared, looking slightly harried. "Samantha, good to have you back. We need to talk." In his office, David paced, running a hand through his hair. "I've been thinking about our situation," he began. "I value you immensely, both professionally and, well, personally. But I'm worried I've been asking too much of you." Samantha felt a surge of emotion, relief, gratitude, and a touch of something else she couldn't quite name. "I appreciate that, David. I've been feeling a bit overwhelmed lately." David nodded, his expression softening. "I want you to know that you can always be honest with me about your needs. This partnership only works if we're both at our best." The word partnership hung in the air between them, loaded with unspoken implications. Samantha was about to respond when a commotion outside interrupted them. They emerged from the office to find Claire engaged in a heated argument with one of the junior executives. As David moved to intervene, Samantha overheard snippets of the conversation, something about unauthorized changes to the contract they'd been working on. Later that day, as Samantha was reviewing some documents, she noticed a discrepancy. Digging deeper, she uncovered a trail of subtle alterations to the contract, changes that would significantly benefit Claire's department at the expense of the overall deal. Samantha's heart raced. This was sabotage, plain and simple, but exposing it would mean directly confronting Claire, a prospect that filled her with dread. She debated with herself, weighing the risks. If she stayed silent, the deal could fall apart, potentially costing the company millions. But speaking up could make her an even bigger target for Claire's wrath. Taking a deep breath, Samantha made her decision. She gathered the evidence and headed to David's office. "David, I need to show you something," she said, her voice steady despite her nerves. As she laid out her findings, David's expression darkened. "Are you absolutely certain about this?" he asked, his tone grave. Samantha nodded. "I've triple-checked everything. There's no doubt." David's jaw clenched. "Thank you for bringing this to my attention, Samantha. I'll handle it from here." The next few hours were tense. David called an emergency meeting with the board, and soon the office was buzzing with whispers and speculation. Samantha tried to focus on her work, but she could feel eyes on her. She knew her role in uncovering the sabotage wouldn't stay secret for long. As the day wore on, the tension reached a breaking point. Claire burst out of the boardroom, her face a mask of fury. She marched straight to Samantha's desk. "You," she hissed. "You think you've won. You have no idea what you've just done." Before Samantha could respond, David appeared. "Claire, that's enough. Security will escort you out." As Claire was led away, still shouting threats, David turned to Samantha. "Are you all right?" Samantha nodded, though her hands were shaking. "I'm fine. What happens now?" David sighed heavily. "Claire's been terminated, effective immediately. The board is reviewing the contract changes. You've saved us from a potential disaster, Samantha." He paused, looking at her intently. "But I'm worried about the backlash you might face. Claire has powerful friends in this industry." Samantha straightened her shoulders. "I can handle it. I did what was right for the company." David smiled, a mix of pride and concern in his eyes. "I know you can, but there's something else you should know." He glanced around, ensuring they were alone. "The reason I've been pushing so hard for this deal, it's not just about business. There's a personal stake involved." Samantha listened, her eyes widening, as David revealed the full extent of his past indiscretions, the scandal he'd hinted at when they first met. The deal wasn't just about growing the company. It was about covering his tracks, ensuring that certain questionable practices never came to light. As David finished his confession, Samantha felt a wave of conflicting emotions. Part of her admired his honesty, but another part felt betrayed. Had she been unknowingly complicit in covering up unethical behavior? "I understand if this changes things between us," David said softly, "but I wanted you to know the truth. You've earned that much." Samantha nodded slowly, her mind racing. I need some time to process this," she said. As she left the office that evening, Samantha felt as though the ground had shifted beneath her feet. She had stood up for what she believed was right, only to discover that the lines between right and wrong were far blurrier than she'd realized. She walked through the bustling New York streets, barely noticing the crowds around her. The glittering world she'd worked so hard to be a part of suddenly seemed tarnished. Yet she couldn't deny the thrill of being at the center of such high-stakes drama. Samantha realized she was at a crossroads. She could walk away now, with her integrity intact, but her ambitions unfulfilled. Or she could stay, navigate these treacherous waters, and potentially achieve everything she'd ever dreamed of. But at what cost to her principles? As the city lights flickered around her, Samantha knew that, whatever she decided, nothing would ever be the same again. The following days were a blur of activity and introspection for Samantha. The office was abuzz with rumors about Claire's sudden departure, and Samantha found herself at the center of attention. Some colleagues praised her for her integrity, while others viewed her with suspicion, wondering what other secrets she might uncover. David had given her space to process his revelation, but Samantha knew she couldn't avoid him forever. She spent her evenings poring over ethics guidelines and corporate responsibility articles, trying to reconcile her ambitions with her moral compass. One morning, as Samantha was organizing files in David's office, he entered, looking weary but determined. "Samantha, we need to talk about what I told you." She nodded, steeling herself for the conversation. "I've been thinking about it a lot, David. I'm still processing." David sat heavily in his chair. "I understand, but I need to know where we stand. The deal is moving forward, and I need to know if I can count on you." Samantha took a deep breath. "David, what you told me, it's not just about covering tracks, is it? There are ethical implications here that go beyond just business." He leaned forward, his voice low and intense. "You're right. But you have to understand, in this world, sometimes the lines get blurred. What I did, it wasn't illegal, just ethically gray. And this deal, it's not just about me. It's about securing the future of this company, of everyone who works here." Samantha felt torn. She admired David's honesty, and she couldn't deny the part of her that was thrilled by the high-stakes nature of the situation. But another part of her recoiled at the idea of being complicit in anything unethical. "I need more time," she said finally, "and more information. If I'm going to be involved in this, I need to understand exactly what I'm getting into." David nodded slowly. "Fair enough. I'll have the full files sent to your secure server. But Samantha, I need your decision soon. Things are moving quickly." As Samantha left his office, she felt the weight of the decision pressing down on her. She spent the next few days immersed in the files David had provided, uncovering the full extent of the situation. The more she learned, the more complex the issue became. One evening, as she was working late, Margaret from legal stopped by her desk. "Burning the midnight oil again?" she asked, her tone concerned. Samantha managed a weak smile. "Just trying to stay on top of things." Margaret studied her for a moment. "You know, Samantha, I've been in this business a long time. I've seen people rise and fall, seen deals that seemed too good to be true turn out to be just that. Whatever you're involved in, Just make sure it's worth the cost." Her words hit Samantha hard. She thought about the person she'd been when she first started this job. Ambitious, yes, but also idealistic. Had she lost that part of herself in the glitter and glamour of this world? The next day, Samantha requested a meeting with David. As she entered his office, she felt a mix of nervousness and determination. "I've made my decision," she began, her voice steady. "I'm willing to continue working on this deal, but on one condition. We need to find a way to make this right. Not just legally, but ethically. I won't be part of anything that compromises my integrity or the long-term reputation of this company." David looked at her for a long moment, his expression unreadable. Then, slowly, he nodded. "You're right. I've been so focused on the end goal, I've lost sight of the bigger picture. If we're going to do this, we do it right." As they began to discuss strategies for moving forward ethically, Samantha felt a sense of relief wash over her. She hadn't compromised her values, but she also hadn't walked away from the challenge. However, as she left David's office, she couldn't shake the feeling that this was just the beginning of a much more complex journey. The world she had entered was full of gray areas, and navigating them would require all of her skill, intelligence, and integrity. Samantha looked out at the New York skyline, the city lights twinkling like stars. She had chosen her path, for better or worse. Now, she just had to hope she was strong enough to walk it without losing herself along the way. As Samantha and David worked to restructure the deal in a more ethical manner, the dynamics of their relationship shifted. There was a new level of mutual respect, but also an underlying tension. They were walking a fine line between professional collaboration and personal involvement, and both were acutely aware of it. One morning, as Samantha was reviewing the latest contract revisions, her phone buzzed with an unexpected email. It was from a headhunter she'd spoken to months ago, long before her life had become so intertwined with David's. The message detailed an exciting new opportunity at an up-and-coming tech firm, known for its innovative and ethical business practices. Samantha's heart raced as she read the job description. It was everything she had originally dreamed of, a chance to make a real impact, to work with cutting-edge technology, and to do so in an environment that prioritized integrity. The salary and benefits were impressive, matching what she currently earned working for David. As she contemplated this unexpected fork in her career path, David called her into his office. His expression was serious, his voice low and urgent. "Samantha, I need to talk to you about something important," he began. "The deal we've been working on. There's been a complication." He explained that a rival company had gotten wind of their plans and was making aggressive moves to block the deal. To counter this, David was considering relocating to the West Coast to personally oversee a critical aspect of the merger. "I need you with me, Samantha," he said, his eyes intense. "This could be a game changer for both of us. I'm talking about a significant promotion, equity in the company, real power to shape our future." Samantha felt her head spin. On one hand, David's offer was everything she had been working towards, a chance to truly establish herself at the top of the corporate world. On the other, the new job opportunity represented a fresh start, a chance to build a career on a foundation of clear ethical principles. I need some time to think about this, David," she managed to say. He nodded, understanding in his eyes. "Of course. But Samantha, we're on the verge of something big here. Don't let this opportunity slip away." As she left his office, Samantha felt torn between two possible futures. She thought about the roller coaster of the past months, the excitement, the challenges, the moral quandaries. She had grown so much, learned so much, but at what cost? That evening, Samantha met with her group of female colleagues for dinner. As they chatted and laughed, she felt a pang of nostalgia for the simplicity of her life before all this drama. "You seem distracted," Margaret observed. Everything okay?" Samantha hesitated, then decided to confide in her friends. She outlined her dilemma, careful not to reveal any confidential details. The women listened intently, offering varying perspectives. Some urged her to take the leap with David, arguing that such opportunities were rare. Others cautioned her about the potential pitfalls of mixing personal and professional relationships. "Ultimately, you have to ask yourself what you really want," Margaret said. "Not just career-wise, but in life. Where do you see yourself in 5 years, 10 years? Which path gets you closer to that vision?" As Samantha walked home that night, the city alive around her, she found herself at a crossroads, both literal and figurative. To her left was the path leading to David's office, to the familiar world of high-stakes business and complex moral terrain. To her right was the unknown, a new job that promised ethical clarity, but required leaving behind everything she had built. She stood there for a long moment, the weight of the decision heavy on her shoulders. Whatever she chose would define not just her career, but her identity. Was she the kind of person who could navigate the gray areas of David's world without losing herself? Or was she someone who needed the clear ethical boundaries of a fresh start? As the city lights flickered around her, Samantha took a deep breath. She had entered this world seeking power and success, but she had found something far more complex. Now, she had to decide what truly mattered to her, and what she was willing to sacrifice to achieve it. With a sense of both trepidation and excitement, Samantha made her choice. She pulled out her phone, her fingers hovering over the keypad. It was time to shape her own destiny, for better or for worse. Samantha's fingers trembled as she dialed David's number. The city bustled around her, but she was oblivious to everything except the sound of the ringtone. "Samantha?" David's voice was a mixture of surprise and concern. "Is everything all right?" "We need to talk," she said, her voice steadier than she felt. "Can you meet me at the office? Now?" 30 minutes later, Samantha stood in David's office, the New York skyline a glittering backdrop to the most important conversation of her life. "David, I've made a decision," she began, meeting his eyes. "I can't go to the West Coast with you." His face fell, but before he could speak, she continued, "I've been offered another job, one that aligns more closely with my personal ethics. But that's not why I'm here. There's something else we need to discuss." Taking a deep breath, Samantha laid out everything she had uncovered about the deal. Not just the parts David had confessed, but deeper irregularities she had pieced together during her late nights of research. "This goes beyond ethical gray areas, David," she said softly. "If this gets out, it could destroy everything. The company, your reputation, everything we've worked for." David sank into his chair, his face a mask of shock and dismay. How did you find all this?" "It doesn't matter," Samantha replied. "What matters is what we do now." For a moment, the only sound in the room was the faint hum of the city below. Then David spoke, his voice barely above a whisper. "I never meant for it to go this far. I thought I could fix it, make it right." Samantha felt a surge of empathy, mixed with disappointment. "I know, but we can't keep covering this up. It's time to come clean." David looked up, fear in his eyes. "That would ruin everything. I'd lose it all." "Maybe," Samantha conceded. "Or maybe it's a chance to rebuild on a stronger foundation, to be the leader I know you can be." As they talked through the night, hammering out a plan to disclose the irregularities and face the consequences, Samantha felt a weight lifting from her shoulders. This wasn't the glamorous world of power and luxury she had dreamed of, but it felt real and right. The next few weeks were a whirlwind of activity. David, with Samantha's support, went public with the information. The fallout was intense. Stock prices plummeted, investigations were launched, and the media had a field day. But amidst the chaos, something unexpected happened. David's honesty in coming forward, and his commitment to making things right began to turn the tide of public opinion. Slowly, painfully, the company began to rebuild, this time on a foundation of transparency and ethical practices. Samantha, true to her decision, didn't stay to see it through. She accepted the other job offer, ready to start fresh. But her role in uncovering the truth and pushing for accountability had not gone unnoticed. On her last day, as she packed up her desk, David approached her. "I owe you an apology," he said, "and a thank you. You showed me what real strength looks like." Samantha smiled, feeling a complex mix of emotions. "We both learned a lot, I think." As she left the building for the last time, Samantha paused to look back. The glittering facade seemed different now, less intimidating, more human. She had entered this world seeking power and glamour, but she was leaving with something far more valuable: integrity, self-knowledge, and the confidence to forge her own path. The city stretched out before her, full of new possibilities. Samantha stepped forward, ready to write the next chapter of her story. One where success and ethics walked hand in hand, where ambition was tempered by compassion, and where true power came from staying true to oneself. As she hailed a taxi, Samantha felt a sense of peace. The journey had been tumultuous, filled with difficult choices and moral quandaries, but it had shaped her into someone stronger, wiser, and more authentic than she ever could have imagined. The taxi pulled away from the curb, carrying Samantha towards her new future. Behind her, the skyline of Manhattan glittered in the fading light, a reminder of the world she was leaving behind. But ahead lay endless possibilities and the promise of a life lived on her own terms. Samantha smiled to herself. This wasn't an ending, she realized. It was just the beginning.